Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to make a delicious maple glazed pork loin roast with apples and cranberries. The pork stays extra moist and tender thanks to a brine that we're going to create, and combined with the sticky maple glaze and syrupy apples and cranberries, it just screams holiday. Now if you're not already a subscriber, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and that way you won't miss any of my holiday recipes. Okay, so we are going to be working with a 4-pound pork loin roast. Now when you get to the butcher, make sure you ask for the roast and not the pork tenderloin, because that's something else. The reason why I like a pork loin roast for holiday entertaining is it can feed a crowd and it's really inexpensive compared to a turkey or a beef tenderloin. So you want to make sure that you brine your pork at least 24 hours before you roast it. That way it will really give your pork a chance to tenderize and become a lot more flavorful. So the day before, you can create the brine, and the brine is super simple to do. In a medium saucepan, you're going to add a cup of water and 1/3 cup of salt and 1/3 cup of brown sugar. You can whisk that all together with the water and just give it a good simmer so that the salt and the sugar begin to dissolve. Then you can take this mixture and pour it into a large Dutch oven. I like to use a Dutch oven because the pork loin fits really nicely in the brine, but if you have a large bowl, that will work too. And then to that, we're going to add 7 cups of cold water. So we want to make sure that this water is really cold and not the slightest bit warm, because you don't want to put your pork loin in a warm brine because it will actually start to cook the pork. So if you have to put it in the refrigerator to cool it down, that's a good thing to do before you actually go and add the pork. Then to our brine, we're also going to add a tablespoon of black peppercorns, a tablespoon of fennel seeds, 3 garlic cloves that have been mashed, 1 bay leaf, you can use fresh or dried, and 4 sprigs of fresh rosemary. And now your brine is ready for your pork. So go ahead and just gently place the pork in the brine, and you want to make sure it's fully submerged. So if your pork loin is not submerged at this point, you can go ahead and add a little bit more water, or you can also take a plate and put it on top of the Dutch oven instead of actually putting a lid on it, and that will help it to submerge as well. So then you can go ahead and take your Dutch oven and place it in the refrigerator overnight, and while you sleep, your brine will get to work flavoring and tenderizing that pork. Then before you roast your pork loin, you want to take it out of the brine and give it a good rinse. Then place it into a casserole dish and pat it down dry. You want to make sure that your pork loin is really dry before you sear it, otherwise you won't get a nice caramelized sear and it'll start to steam up instead of caramelize. Then at this point, I do like to take the brine and put it through a fine mesh sieve into a pitcher just to catch all those peppercorns and fennel seeds, because that's not something you want to put down your drain. So I would do that first. You can discard all the solids and then pour the rest of the brine down the drain. Then you can set your pork loin aside while we make the glaze. So the glaze is something that we are going to pour over our pork, and we are going to baste it with this glaze as it roasts. And it'll create a really delicious, flavorful sauce that will also flavor our apples and our cranberries. You want to add 1/2 cup of pure maple syrup, a tablespoon of Dijon mustard, a tablespoon of soy sauce, 2 garlic cloves that have been minced, a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. Okay, so we're also going to need a tablespoon of fresh orange juice. But before you cut into the orange, you want to make sure that you take a vegetable peeler and just peel off 6 to 7 strips, because we are going to use this to flavor our cranberries and apples as our pork roasts. But we want to do that first before we cut into the orange. That way you're only using 1 orange. 2 teaspoons of apple cider vinegar. Now, if you didn't have apple cider vinegar, you really could use any type of vinegar. I just would stay away from balsamic vinegar, which might be a little bit too strong. And then we're also going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves, which is going to create a really delicious holiday flavor to this glaze. And 2 tablespoons of fresh rosemary. So you can mix that all up, and our glaze is ready to go. And we want to have this ready so that as soon as our pork loin is seared, we can just glaze it on top. So to sear our pork loin, I'm working with a 14.5 cast iron skillet. I love this size skillet because a 4-pound pork loin fits in this skillet perfectly, and we're going to sear it, and then we're also going to place it in the oven. So it goes right from cooktop to oven. I'll leave you a link in the description if you want to know where to get it. So in the bottom of the skillet, you're going to add 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil. And while that's heating up, you can season your pork with a little freshly cracked pepper. You don't actually need to add any more salt to this because it has been sitting in our salty brine for 24 hours. So you should be good on the salt. And then once your oil is hot, you're going to place the pork loin in the skillet and just allow it to caramelize and sear on all sides It's a little unruly, but you can basically do it with tongs. You just want to make sure that it's nicely browned, even on the end. Then you can remove the pork loin and transfer it to a casserole, because now we are going to deglaze our skillet with a little bit of hard cider. So hard apple cider is not exactly the same thing as regular apple cider. It actually has alcohol in it. And when you get to the store, you may have a choice between sweet or dry. Try to get the dry cider. I think that works better. In fact, Trader Joe's has a really great hard apple cider from France that I use a lot. But if you can't find hard apple cider, you could deglaze your pan with half a cup of white wine and then add a cup of chicken broth. Now, if you don't drink it all, you could just use all chicken broth, so a cup and a half of the chicken broth. And then at this point, we're going to add 5 cups of Lady Gala apples. So I love the Gala apples because they're a little bit sweet and they really cook down nicely so they become nice and soft and tender. I do leave the peels on because not only is it easier, but it adds a nice texture to it, and I think it gives it a pretty color once the apples are roasted. And then you're also going to add a cup and a half of fresh cranberries and a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cloves. And then you're going to go back to those little orange peels that you peeled off, and we're going to add those to the apples and the cranberries. And then you can go ahead and place your pork loin right on top. Then we're going to go back to that glaze that we created, and we're going to brush the pork loin all over with the glaze. And then hold on to the glaze because we're going to use it to baste the pork loin with as it roasts. Then we're going to place our pork in a 375-degree Fahrenheit oven for about 40 minutes. So I say about 40 minutes because you want to pull it out once the pork has reached an internal temperature of 145 degrees Fahrenheit. I think one of the things that ends up happening with pork a lot of times is people overcook it. And there are new guidelines, and I'll leave you a link in the description of how to cook pork. And I think the perfect temperature is 150 degrees. So if you pull it out at 145 and let it rest, it'll come up to temperature at 150, and that is perfect. And once it's been in there for 20 minutes, go ahead and give it another basting with the maple glaze. Just pour the whole thing, whatever you have left, on top of the pork. And it will drip down into the fruit. That's part of the charm of this recipe. You do want that fruit to also get basted with the glaze, because as it cooks down and releases its juices, as well as the juice with the pork, everything combines to create a fantastic sauce. Then once it's done, you can take it out. And what I typically do is remove the pork loin and put it on a carving board. Cover it loosely with some foil, and then take your skillet and put it on your cooktop just to reduce the sauce a little bit. It doesn't need much because it's pretty syrupy to begin with, but it might still be a little bit runny. So I just like to put it on a medium flame and reduce it until it's syrupy. And during this time, I also like to add a little bit of Worcestershire sauce, about a half a teaspoon, just to give it a little bit more savoriness, because the fruit and the maple glaze is pretty sweet, so you just want to balance that out a little bit. And then I also like to add a tablespoon of Dijon mustard. And then your sauce is ready to go. And then the way that I like to plate this up is to take all of the fruit and put it on a bed of a large platter, and then carve maybe half of the pork loin and place that on top of the fruit. And then you can use some fresh rosemary sprigs to garnish, and then cut some of those little mandarin oranges in half and place a whole clove in the center. And you can put those around, and it looks so festive and so beautiful. It's just the perfect holiday meal if you need to feed a crowd. And as always, you can find the printable version of this recipe at entertainingwithbeth.com. And if you would like a terrific side dish for this meal, I highly recommend my twice baked potatoes. And you can click this annotation here, and I'll see you over there.